Senna chose Ironmark territory because the trade map said it was stable, prosperous, and unlikely to have anyone looking for her specifically. At her age, 24 years of moving between pack borders, carrying what she could and leaving what she couldn't, that qualified as ideal. The market town of Ashvale Cross sat at the junction of 3 trade roads and smelled like fresh bread, horse leather, and the specific commercial optimism of a place that had never had to fight particularly hard to be where it was. Clean cobblestones, layered merchant stalls, crowds that moved with purpose rather than fear. Senna moved through it easily. Wanderers always did. She kept her traveling cloak half-fastened, her boots worn, her posture loose, the practiced ease of a woman who expected inconvenience but refused to look worried about it. She was examining a tray of preserved herbs that glinted in the autumn light when the crowd shifted. At first it was subtle. Conversations dropped in volume. Footsteps slowed. A ripple moved through the market like a collective held breath. Senna glanced up, mildly irritated. Usually this meant a tax inspection or someone important arriving. She considered leaving. Then the air tightened. He stood at the far end of the Market Avenue, surrounded by riders in pack colors. Deep silver and black, the Ashvale bloodline mark on every pauldron. His presence didn't announce itself so much as arrive, filling the space before anyone had registered he was there. Alpha King Kalen Ashvale. Senna recognized him from the territorial broadsheets, hard not to when a pack liked reminding every border settlement who ruled it. She looked away immediately. Looking at kings in public was one of those small, efficient ways to complicate a day. It didn't help. The Alpha King stopped walking. Senna didn't notice at first. She was busy arguing with a herb vendor over whether the dried silverleaf was from this season or 3 seasons ago. Then the vendor froze. Then the person behind Senna. Then the noise. When Senna turned, the Alpha King was no longer distant. He was closer. Much closer. His guard had followed at a trot, clearly unhappy about whatever had pulled his attention, hands moving to weapons they hadn't been ready to draw a moment ago. His eyes were not on her face. They were on her neck. Senna felt the particular prickle of being studied and shifted. The collar of her cloak had slipped. Enough to expose the mark, a small, precise thing. Inked into the skin below her left ear in the old style. Lines and symbols from a tradition she'd inherited rather than chosen. She'd never thought much about it. It was just there. The Alpha King went completely still. For a long, vertiginous moment, Senna wondered if she was about to be arrested for bearing an unauthorized pack symbol. His face had the controlled, unreadable quality of someone managing a response that wanted to be larger than was appropriate in a market square. He stepped forward. His guard protested quietly at first, then urgently. He ignored them. Each step was measured, deliberate, but his breathing was not. She could see it, the tension in his jaw, the slight tightening of his hands at his sides. He stopped in front of her. Up close, he was taller than the broadsheet suggested, dark-haired, gray-eyed, with the specific weariness of someone who had been running something enormous for a long time and had not slept as well as they used to. He looked at the mark the way people looked at things they had given up expecting to find. "I owe you a debt," he said. His voice was quiet enough that only she heard it. Senna waited. Nothing else followed. No guard. No drawn weapon. Just an Alpha King standing in a market square staring at her neck like it had personally rearranged his entire understanding of something. She cleared her throat. "That's generous," she said carefully. "But unless you recently paid someone to not step on my foot, I think you have the wrong person." His gaze lifted to her face. His eyes were gray and carried something old and unresolved. "You bear her mark," he said. Senna glanced at the mark below her ear. "I bear several questionable inheritances. That one's just the most visible." Something crossed his face. Not amusement. something closer to recognition pressing against something that had been held very still for a long time. "You will come with me," he said. Senna exhaled. I was really hoping to finish the herb argument first. Something almost like relief moved through his expression. "Of course," he said quietly. She always hated interrupted shopping, too. Senna's smile faded. Before she could ask what that meant, the guard had closed in around her. Not rough, firm, careful, as if she were something that needed handling rather than containing. The crowd slowly exhaled around them. Senna was guided forward, her heart moving faster than she wanted to admit. Her mind scrambling to make sense of why the Alpha King of Ironmark had just bowed his head, barely perceptibly, but unmistakably, before an unbonded Omega Wanderer in a market square. As she walked beside a man who believed he owed her something she hadn't done, Senna thought that stopping for herbs had once again proven to be a terrible idea. She had been escorted in many ways over the years, turned away from pack gates, guided away from settlements that didn't take in wanderers. Once escorted out of a border town by 2 guards who had been very polite about it and very firm. This was different. The royal riders flanked her with the careful precision of an honor guard, which was a significant step up from her usual reception and made her deeply suspicious. The Alpha King rode beside her rather than ahead, which was not how powerful men typically traveled. She noted this. She noted also the quality of his silence, not the absence of words, but the presence of thought. A man working through something carefully while appearing to do nothing. Ashvale Cross gave way to the surrounding territory as they rode. Rolling land, managed forest, the infrastructure of a pack that had been prosperous for several generations and intended to stay that way. Senna pressed her hands against the pommel of the horse they'd provided and thought about the mark below her ear. Her mother's mark. She had not known her mother. Had been told about her by the woman who raised her, an old border healer who had taken in a 3-year-old Omega, left at her gate in the depths of winter with nothing but the clothes she was wearing and the ink below her ear. "Your mother put it there," the old healer had said when Senna was old enough to ask. "Old pack tradition, a lineage mark, so you'd know where you came from, even if you couldn't remember it." Senna had grown up knowing the mark, and nothing else. She looked at the Alpha King riding beside her. "You said I bear her mark?" she said. "Whose?" He looked at her. The gray eyes were doing the same focused work they'd been doing since the market. "We should speak privately," he said. "We're riding through your territory surrounded by your guard," she said. "How much more private can it get?" A pause. Then, "Fair." He looked ahead at the road for a moment. 15 years ago, he said, I was not yet a king. Senna listened. I was the second son, which in pack politics means you're the spare, trained for everything, trusted with nothing, waiting for a position you may never hold. His voice was level in the way of someone describing events they'd had a long time to process. I was sent to the eastern border during the Thornback conflict, a minor diplomatic post. I was 21 and believed I was being sidelined. Were you? Yes, he said. But what I found there mattered more than where they'd meant to put me. The road curved through a stand of oak. Light moved across them in fragments. The border settlements were in difficulty, he said. The conflict had disrupted supply lines. There was a healer working the settlements, moving between them, sharing what she had, treating people the pack had stopped reaching. Senna felt something slow in her chest. She was Omega, he said, unbonded, no pack affiliation. No resources except what she carried and what the settlements gave her. What was her name? Mara, he said. She bore the mark below her left ear. The old Greywood lineage sigil. Senna's hand moved involuntarily to her own neck. She saved people who had been written off by every formal system, Kalen said, including a 21-year-old second son who got a border fever that his own pack supply lines hadn't left him medicine to treat. He looked at her. She stayed with me for 3 days while it broke, shared her rations, taught me, He paused. She told terrible jokes. Senna's throat felt strange. That does sound familiar. His eyes sharpened. You knew her? She raised me, Senna said. From the time I was 3 until I was 16. She died when I was... She stopped, started differently. She left me the mark and a satchel of herb knowledge, and a tendency toward the border settlements. The palace was visible now at the end of the road, ancient stone, high walls, the kind of structure built to last rather than to impress. Kaelin had gone quiet in the specific way of someone receiving information that rearranged several things simultaneously. She raised you, he said. Yes? She never told me. She didn't tell anyone, Senna said. She wasn't the telling kind. He was quiet for a long moment. She left me, he said finally, not bitterly, with the straightforward acknowledgement of a man who had spent 15 years understanding something. When I recovered, said she had other settlements to reach. I tried to compensate her, and she refused. She would, Senna said. She said a debt that could be paid in coin wasn't a debt, he said. It was commerce. Senna looked at him sideways. She used to say that to me too, she said. Usually when I suggested we could charge more. The gate opened ahead of them. Kaelin looked at her one more time before they rode through. When I became king, he said, I built the border supply network that should have existed 15 years ago. The one she was compensating for by herself. I know, Senna said. I've been using it. Something moved through his expression. Something that had been very tightly held for a long time and was adjusting to the specific pressure of being found. Of course you have, he said, and rode through the gate. The palace did not feel like a place built for comfort. It felt organized, intentional. Every corridor purposeful. Every room designed to accomplish something specific. Senna noticed this immediately and understood it the way she understood every unfamiliar space, by reading what it said about the person who had built or inherited it. It said, "This is a place where things get done." It did not say, "This is a place where people rest." Servants appeared with the precision of well-managed households. No hesitation, no confusion, just the smooth efficiency of people who knew their roles. They bowed to the Alpha King, then paused when they reached Senna, briefly uncertain which protocol covered a wandering Omega healer in a travel cloak. Senna gave them a nod. "Just show me where the water is and I'll manage." One of them almost smiled. The chamber she was given was more than she'd slept in for 2 years. Clean stone walls, a proper bed, a window overlooking the inner courtyard where the afternoon light came through in long angles. She set her satchel down and sat on the bed and looked at the ceiling and thought about Mara. She thought about Mara the way she always thought about her, as the constant that had been there and then wasn't, the voice that had narrated the first years of her adult understanding of the world, the hands that had shown her how to compound a fever remedy and how to tell from someone's posture whether the pain was new or old. She had not, until today, known who Mara had been before she found Senna. A wandering border healer who had once saved a 21-year-old second son, who had become the Alpha King, who had bowed his head, barely, but she had seen it, in a market square when he saw the mark below her ear. Senna lay back on the bed and looked at the ceiling and felt the universe do one of its occasional rearrangements. Kaelin came to the chamber that evening, not with ceremony. A quiet knock, a servant announcing him, the door opening to find him in less formal clothes than he'd worn on the road, the working wool and plain cloth of a man who had set down the weight of the public version for a few hours. He carried a tray himself, which she suspected was unusual. She didn't comment on it. "You haven't eaten," he said. "The servants noted you didn't take the afternoon meal." "I was thinking," she said, "about her. About all of it." He set the tray on the table near the window and pulled a chair without asking, which she appreciated. Asking felt formal, and formal felt wrong for whatever this was. She sat across from him. They were quiet for a moment, the food between them, the afternoon light going gold through the window. What did she tell you? He asked. About where she came from. Very little, Senna said. She was a Greywood Border Omega. She'd left her settlement young. She didn't explain why. Did you ask? Many times. She'd answer something adjacent to the question, and then redirect the conversation. Yes, he said. She did that. Senna looked at him. You only knew her for 3 days. 3 days in that kind of condition, he said, is its own education. You know someone differently when they're the only thing between you and a bad outcome. She thought about the settlements she had moved through, about the people she'd stayed with for 3 days, a week, a fortnight, the kind of knowing that happened in concentrated necessity. I know what you mean, she said. She talked about a child, he said, quietly. Senna's hands stilled on the table. When I was at the worst of the fever, he said. She talked while she worked. I think she'd forgotten I could hear, or perhaps she thought I couldn't understand. But she talked about a child she'd found, a girl with a mark below her ear who needed someone to stay. Senna looked at the window. She stayed, she said. Yes, he said. She did. They sat with that for a moment. What do you want from me? Senna asked. She had learned that direct questions saved time, even when the answers were difficult. You said you owe a debt. What does that mean, practically? He looked at her steadily. On Ironmark, he said, debts of the kind I carry are not settled with coin. She refused that. She said a debt that could be paid in coin was commerce. I remember, Senna said. So what she left me was something I couldn't discharge by sending a payment, he said. It had to be returned in kind, in life, in the way you live. The border supply network? She said. Partly, he said. But I built that in the first year of my reign. It didn't feel complete. She looked at him. And then you walked into a market square with her mark on your neck, she said. And then you walked into a market square with her mark on your neck, he agreed. Senna picked up the bread from the tray and broke it, because her hands needed something to do. I don't want to be a symbol, she said, or a dead object. I've spent 6 years moving between settlements healing people because that's what I know how to do. I'm not interested in being managed by a palace. I'm not interested in managing you, he said. I'm interested in... He stopped. I'm interested in knowing who she raised. She looked at him. The gray eyes were direct and held something that she was beginning to understand was simply how he looked at things that mattered to him, with complete, undivided attention, nothing withheld. She raised someone who makes the same mistakes she did, Senna said. Too much time in difficult places, not enough time eating properly. Yes, he said. I noticed you didn't eat. She almost smiled. I was thinking. You mentioned that. They ate. The evening light came through the window and changed as it always did, and the palace hummed around them with its quiet, purposeful life. And they talked, not about debts or marks or the political complexity of what she was to him in any formal sense. They talked about the border settlements, about which supply lines were working and which weren't, about a root fever that had been moving through the eastern settlements and what she'd been using to treat it. He listened with the focused attention of someone who was going to do something with the information. She was not used to that. She was used to being heard politely and then watched walk away. I should have been doing this, he said when she finished describing the eastern situation. Having these conversations, not waiting for reports to come to me through 3 layers of administration. Reports lose things in translation, she said. Yes, he said. What do you lose? She looked at him. The specific weight of a person, she said. The way you can tell from how someone breathes whether they've been managing pain for weeks or days. The difference between someone who's struggling temporarily and someone who's been abandoned systematically. Reports give you numbers. They don't give you that. He was quiet. She said something similar, he said finally, that the problem with power was that it kept you at the distance where people stopped looking like people. She said that to you in 3 days? She said a great deal in 3 days, he said. I had a fever and nothing else to do but listen. Senna looked at the window. She was like that, she said. She didn't waste the time she had with people. No, he said. She didn't. The court had opinions about the Omega Wanderer in the guest chambers. They formed them with the efficiency of an institution that had been producing opinions for several centuries and saw no reason to slow down. The consensus: unsuitable. Unbonded Omega of no pack affiliation, no formal credentials, no documented lineage beyond a mark she claimed to have inherited. She had arrived in the market, been brought back by the Alpha King himself, and been installed in the guest wing with no formal explanation given to anyone. Lord Brennan, senior council lord, a man of 55 with the political patience of someone who had outlasted 3 shifts of court power and expected to outlast several more, brought the matter to the council chamber within 2 days. The Alpha King's attention is a resource, Brennan said to the assembled lords. Where it goes, power follows. An unbonded Omega Wanderer without pack standing should not be holding that attention. She's in the guest wing, said Commander Rin, who sat at the council table with the expression of a man who had been asked to care about things he found unimportant. Not the royal chambers. This week, Brennan said. Lord Brennan, Rin said. She healed border settlements for 6 years on her own resources. The king built the supply network because of someone like her. Perhaps the question isn't why she's here, but why more people like her aren't. The symbolism, Rin said, is that the Alpha King bowed his head in a market square because a woman bore a mark that mattered to him. I'd be more worried if he hadn't. The council moved on uneasily. Brennan did not. Senna found out about it from Aldrich, the palace steward, a quiet, thorough man who seemed to have made it his personal mission to make sure she understood the palace's invisible architecture before it caught her by surprise. Lord Brennan will try to establish your status formally, Aldrich said, which sounds administrative but is actually political. He wants it on record that you have no pack standing, which limits what the king can extend to you. He's right that I have no pack standing, Senna said. Yes, Aldrich said. That's what makes it a useful argument. It's technically true. Senna thought about this. What would pack standing require? She said. Aldrich looked at her with the expression of a man who had just realized the conversation had moved somewhere he hadn't anticipated. In the simplest terms, he said carefully, formal recognition from a pack alpha. A bond, an appointment, or a formal acknowledgement of service? And if the Alpha King gave a formal acknowledgement of service? Then Lord Brennan's argument collapses, Aldrich said, but the king would need to. I'm not asking you to arrange it, Senna said. I'm asking you what it would look like if it happened. Aldrich studied her. It would look like the Alpha King choosing to honor a debt, he said slowly. In the old way. Publicly. Good, she said. Tell me when Brennan plans to bring it to formal council. She found Kalen that evening in the place she had begun to understand was his actual working space, not the formal study, but a smaller room off it, where the maps were spread and the real decisions happened without the ceremony attached. He looked up when she came in. Lord Brennan is building a case, she said. I know, he said. He's going to argue I have no standing. Yes. And you were going to let him. A pause. I was going to address it through channels. Channels take time, she said. And while they're moving, I'm whatever he makes me in the public record. He looked at her steadily. What do you suggest? He said. I suggest, she said, that you do what you started to do in the market square. Formally. Publicly. Before Brennan has time to define it first. That would be a formal acknowledgement of service, she said. In the old way. I know what it means. I've read the border pack histories. It's a public declaration that extends the king's standing to someone who has served the territory. It doesn't require a bond. It doesn't require her to become anything she isn't. He was quiet. You've been here 3 days, he said. You already know the mechanism. I've been moving through pack territories for 6 years, she said. I learned to understand political architecture very quickly, or I spent a lot of time being redirected." "She would have done the same," he said quietly. "Arrived somewhere and immediately understood how it worked." "She taught me," Senna said. He looked at his hands for a moment. "You understand what a formal acknowledgement means," he said. "How the court will read it." "They'll read what you let them read," she said. "If you frame it as honoring a debt, it's that. If you frame it as politics, it's that. What is it?" He looked at her. "Both," he said, "and neither." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking to become a court figure," she said. "I'm not asking to stay indefinitely. I'm asking you to not let a council lord define me as nothing while I'm under your roof." "No," he said. "No, you won't, or... No, I will not let him define you as nothing," he said. "I've been building to the formal acknowledgement since the market. I was moving slowly because I wanted to be sure you understood what it... I understand what it means," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow morning." The council assembled expecting a routine session. What they got was the Alpha King standing before them with the formal posture of someone who had made a decision and was there to announce it rather than debate it. Senna stood to his left, not behind, not separate, beside. Brennan's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. "By the old acknowledgement right," Kalen said. "In the register that filled rooms without volume, I recognize Senna of the Greywood line as a formal servant of Ironmark territory. Her work in the border settlements is noted as service to the pack. Her standing is extended accordingly." He looked at the council. "Lord Brennan," he said, "you had a point of concern?" Brennan's prepared argument was gone. The ground it had been built on had been cleared. "No, my lord," he said. "Good," Kalen said. "Then we can move to the Eastern Supply reports, which I understand have some interesting gaps." He looked at Senna briefly. She looked back. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The Eastern Supply report discussion lasted 2 hours and revealed 3 separate breakdowns in distribution that Brennan's faction had been managing in their favor for several years. It came out not because Senna said anything directly. It came out because Kalen had started asking the specific questions she had raised in their conversation 2 evenings ago. The ones about what reports lost in translation, and the answers, when pressed through the administrative record, told a story that hadn't been available when everyone was looking at summaries. Brennan attempted 3 times to redirect the inquiry. Each time, Kalen returned to the specific question. After the 2nd hour, the council lord in charge of Eastern administration asked for a recess. He did not return. 3 days later, a formal investigation was opened. Brennan did not attend the next council session. Senna found Kalen on the wall walk that evening, a high point on the palace's outer structure that gave a clear view of the territory in every direction. She had been told he sometimes came here when the day had been complicated. She climbed up and stood beside him. The wind was cold and carried the smell of autumn fields and distant wood smoke. "You should not have been able to draw that out from the reports," she said. "I had good questions," he said. "You had information you shouldn't have had unless you'd been talking to someone who'd been in those settlements." "Yes," he said. "They're going to understand that I was useful," she said. "Brennan's faction. They'll try to redirect that." "They'll try," he said. "Are you prepared for what that looks like?" He looked at her sideways. "Are you?" She thought about 6 years on the roads. About being turned away from gates and redirected from settlements, and told that wanderers weren't the pack's concern. "I've been managing complications since I was 16, she said. "I'm not afraid of complicated." He looked back at the territory. "She said that too," he said. "More or less, she said fear was useful information, but a bad advisor." "I know," Senna said. "She said that to me approximately 400 times. He almost smiled. "Did it work?" "Eventually." They were quiet for a moment, the wind moving between them. "You're going to leave," he said. Not as an accusation, a statement, the way he stated things he'd already thought through. "I'm a wanderer," she said. "Yes." She stopped. "I don't do well with permanent." "Neither do I," he said. "I do well with necessary." "You tell me what's necessary and I'll work with that." She looked at him. "Why?" she said. "Because she never asked for anything," he said. "And I've been carrying that for 15 years. And you're the nearest I have to—" He stopped. Started differently. "Because talking to you for 3 days has told me more about the condition of this territory than 3 years of council reports. And I would like to keep talking to you." "That's practical," she said. "It is," he agreed. "It's also not only that." She looked at the territory below, the fields, the settled order of it, the roads that connected settlements that had, for 6 years, been part of her route. "She told me," Senna said, "that the worst thing that could happen to a good person was to spend their whole life in motion and never find anywhere that deserved to be still." He didn't say anything. "I think she knew," Senna said, "when she found me, that she needed to stop somewhere. I think I was the reason she stopped." "She gave you a reason to stay," he said. "Yes." "And then she left you one to keep moving." "Yes." They stood on the wall walk in the autumn evening, and the wind moved around them, and neither of them said what they were thinking, because it was too early and too large, and they were both, in their separate ways, careful about large things said too early. But neither of them went in. She stayed longer than she had planned. 1 week became 2. 2 became a month. She did not stay in the guest chambers indefinitely. She moved, she always moved, but the movement shifted. From border settlement to border settlement, but now with the formal acknowledgement behind her name that opened gates that had previously been closed, and with a line of communication to the palace that sent her questions and received her answers, and then actually did something with them. The Eastern Distribution investigation produced results. 3 separate redirections were corrected. The settlements received what they were supposed to receive. Senna learned about it on the road from a settlement headwoman who couldn't explain why the supply correction had finally come through after years of going nowhere. Senna could explain. She didn't. She came back to Ironmark on the first snow of the season, not because she had to. Because she had something to tell him about the northern settlement conditions that she'd been tracking for 2 months, and that was going to cause a real problem in the spring if the supply routing wasn't adjusted now. That was the practical reason. She was aware of the other reasons. She was, as Mara had always noted with quiet exasperation, very good at identifying things and very careful about naming them too quickly. Kaelin was in the small working room when she arrived. Maps spread, the real decisions happening without ceremony. He looked up. He did not look surprised. "Northern settlements," she said. "Sit down," he said. "Tell me." She sat. She told him. He listened with the complete, undivided attention that she had been thinking about for 2 months on the road, in the specific way she thought about things she was careful about naming. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "You came back to tell me this?" "Yes," she said. "You could have sent word." "Reports lose things in translation," she said. The corner of his mouth moved. "You used my own argument against me," he said. "It was a good argument." He looked at her. She looked back. "Stay through the winter," he said. "The spring routing decisions need the northern context, and you have it." "That's practical," she said. "Yes," he said. "It is." A pause. "It's also not only that," she said. He looked at her steadily. "No," he said. "It isn't." Outside, the first snow was settling over the territory. The fields and the roads and the settlements that were, for the first time in years, receiving what they were supposed to receive. She had spent 6 years in motion. She was, she thought, beginning to understand what deserved to be still. "Through the winter," she said. "Through the winter," he agreed. She picked up her notes on the northern settlements, and they worked until the fire burned low. and neither of them mentioned what was happening because neither of them needed to. It was already happening, slow and sure and real, the way the things built from honesty rather than urgency tended to happen. Like a mark below an ear, passed from one life to another. Like a debt repaid not in coin, but in living. Like two people, both careful about large things said too early, choosing the same room. He froze in the market square. He had been carrying 15 years of debt with no way to pay it. And then she walked in with her mother's mark on her neck. And the debt didn't disappear. It transformed into something neither of them had planned. Something real. Built the way real things were built. Slowly by people who understood that the best foundations took time. She had learned that from her mother. He had learned it from her mother too. And now they were learning it from each other.